Hi everyone, my name's Carrie Jane, and today I'm going to be talking about something I feel is not talked about enough. It is not a subject that we look at closely enough and really be honest with ourselves, with what's really going on, either personally in our lives or as like a human race as a whole. And also, just quickly before I go into things, if you hear really loud noises in the background, it's extremely windy. There's stuff blown around everywhere. So I apologize for any of that potential background noise. But anyway, back to the topic. This is a very important topic because it has a lot to do with our understanding of ourselves, which gives us context as to, where we are, what we're supposed to be doing here. And in my opinion, it's one of the major keys to something like ascension. If you do believe in reincarnation, if you do believe in that sort of spiritual salvation, so to speak. That's kind of what it's like in the spiritual community. Rather than, for example, in other religions where it's like, oh, you need to just be pious and make sure that you follow this list of rules and follow this text, which has been basically descended from a real ascended master on earth. Rather than that, it's more like, what can I do to empower myself and literally change myself from the inside out. If you are a follower of ascension is literally the transcendence of the human mind, body, and spirit. Body in that sense that some literally believe that they are, while they're doing this work, creating a light body for themselves. So yeah, enough of that background information. Let's talk about what is on the agenda for today. And that is, what is ego? Let's start off with acknowledging what most people think ego is. The definition that you will find when you look it up just real quick will be very simply an inflated self, like an inflated sense of the self, essentially. And that's where, if you, for example, were having a spiritual conversation with someone and you said to them, oh, that is just a manifestation of ego, they would mistake you for saying something like, oh, that's just you thinking that you're better than everyone else, or something like that. Yes, that is one part of the ego. But the ego, in a spiritual sense, beyond the definition that you will find in a dictionary and whatever academic training that you've had, beyond that, it is infinite. Ego can manifest in an infinite number of ways. And that is because the definition of ego that we're using today is that ego is whatever manifests when there is separation from source. So having this in mind, when you are a soul and you decide to come to the earth school and you decide to be a human, you are choosing ego. You are choosing to have the experience of ego, because here we are in the illusion of separation. Of course, we can never really be separated from source or God. Same thing. We can never actually be separated from source, but when we come here, we lose all knowledge that we have within ourselves inherently. We forget everything. We have amnesia. We don't know what we are, what the heck we're doing. And it's to believe this story. It's kind of like a play. And you choose what character you're going to be and the other characters in your story that are going to create the situation. So when you come to be a human, there's no escaping ego. Everyone is in ego. And this is extremely important to acknowledge because there are a lot of people on earth that don't think this. They don't want to acknowledge this. They don't want to acknowledge that these things that they want so desperately to be real, so desperately to be true, is actually just an experience that we chose to have, and beyond that it's not real, because it's just a manifestation that is separate from source, and the only thing that is real is source and unity consciousness, essentially. So now that was really complicated. Let's go into some examples of ego to try to make this a little bit more easily understood as to what manifests when we are under the impression that we're separate from source. Ego is fear. Ego is, or are, I should say, the stories that we tell ourselves that we desperately want to be true. They are stories that we don't ever want to acknowledge are just stories that are perpetuated by the illusion of separation, and therefore have delusions. That's basically what a delusion is. Ego is when you can't let go of your story or acknowledge that at least it's a story. And on a side note, that's when a lot of souls tend to get trapped here on the karmic wheel. Ego is self-preservation over cooperation. Seeing yourself as more important than the whole rather than the actual whole itself. Ego is self-hatred, self-harm. Ego is when you lack self-actualization and then inadvertently have this craving to be important no matter what, and then sometimes end up making stories because of that. But you don't know that you are source. You can't remember that you are inherently important because you're inherently love. So there's this desperate need to be important, and so whatever comes after that, ego. I could go on. I could have an hour-long discussion video with someone about how, or the many ways in which we've all seen ego happen to people, because it is the human experience, and the human experience is infinite. There will literally be no other you ever, and that in itself is its own manifestation of ego. And it goes on and on and on. And it is interesting. It is actually an interesting topic. It's not just something to be wary of. It's actually a very interesting way, I think, to have a soul evolve and to have infinite possibilities and infinite trajectories. I call it the landscape of metanoia. Metanoia being a spiritual transformation or conversion. But I digress. The main reason why I very much feel a deep need to address this question is because after many, many years of deep diving into this spiritual community, into the so-called lightworker communities, into the ascension communities, into people, practicing yoga and meditation, etc. What I have seen is so few people who dive into these topics on a mental body level. And they learn all these facts and all these words and all these pieces of information, take that on, but then never address their own ego. They never acknowledge their own ego. They never confront it. Possibly because they don't know that it's there. But I think it's more because, like I said in many videos before, people will do anything but look at their own soul. Look at the shadow, essentially, and ego is shadow to me. So because of that, what I see in these communities is the manipulation of spirituality, the commodification of spirituality, which is another video. I see people using spirituality as a badge for being superior, for like moral superiority, essentially. To use it as a way of like, oh, I'm different and I'm more special than you are. Obviously, if you're enlightened, that cannot be. That's not an enlightened perspective to have, because it's just not true. It is, the only thing that's true, like I said, is unity consciousness. The second that you try to make a story, for example, about yourself, and people love to do this in the spiritual community. They'll be like, oh, I'm from the blue avian rays of whatever, and I work with Mother Mary, or I work with the angels, or I've been here since the draconian era, or like literally there's so many stories out there, and it's like, that's great. I can't disprove that. No one can. In fact, I believe a lot of it is true most of the time. However, it is used, I've noticed, as just a way to make yourself seem better than everyone else in the community, to make that person inside feel special. And then this is actually having the very opposite effect that these people claim to want, which is to return to source consciousness, to get back to this place where we're all one, to actually ascend, essentially. I'm getting really sick and tired of people using spirituality to manipulate others, to manipulate people's perception of them, to basically use it in any way to their own benefit. I'm sick and tired of it. It's confusing people who are just starting out and just, for example, getting into crystals or getting into tarot. It's confusing them. It's manipulating them. For example, I have worked many times in retail in places that sell crystals, that sell tarot, that sell whatever. And in those places, it was never about actually giving these people truth and giving these people empowerment. It was about manipulating them into believing something, giving them whatever the heck it was that they wanted when they came in through the door, so that they would walk out with that product. And that is the commodification of spirituality, and that is when ego comes in when ego comes into spirituality without addressing it, without acknowledging it. Like, as I said in my last video, you can't monopolize truth. And if you don't address your own ego before you start this spiritual journey, if you don't address that other people have egos as well in your spiritual journey, you run the risk of being manipulated and ending up in some place down the road that you did not intend on being, within your own transformation, your own spiritual voyage, so to speak. It's not a good thing for us. It's scaring me. The commodification of spirituality is really scaring me, because we all see this window of opportunity for humans to finally get over this hurdle that has been keeping us here forever, for eons. But this is confusing people. It's just so bizarre. I don't get it. So, at the end of this rant, I think that one of the ways to address this issue is actually a quote. It comes from a quote that I really like by Carl Jung. Let me bring it up just so I make sure I get it exactly right, because I have a lot of respect for it. Okay, here it is. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. If you really want to be spiritual, if you really want to be enlightened, if you really want to transform your life in this deep, deep way. It does not come from pretending everything is amazing. It does not become from like being so positive all the time that you actually ignore the work, which is your shadow. Shadow work is a real thing. Look it up on YouTube, look it up online. There are actual practitioners that help people with shadow work. We did not come here to just become so hyper positive to a point of creepiness while this wound on our body is just festering and becoming infected and basically killing us in the end. That's like the visual I have to represent this this part of the collective consciousness within the spiritual community. So the way that we work through ego, in my opinion, is shadow work. We really get honest with ourselves. We look at the stuff that we do not want to look at. We say, that's there. I'm pretending it's not there, but it is actually there. I'm going to run right into it. And it's going to be hard. It's going to be the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my whole life. But it is the key out of here. It is the key to salvation, the key to bliss, the key to this positive life that I want so, so badly, and that I want to just pretend that I'm already there. You need to do the work, is what I'm trying to say. The spiritual stuff does not come from just like, ooh, I bought this pretty crystal, and this is just going to transform my life, and I never have to do anything ever again, and people will feed me grapes and wine and cheese, and I'll just live in bliss because I'm so important, so great. No. This love, this bliss that we are ascending into comes from doing the hard work. You're just digging through mountains of shit. You're climbing a mountain of shit, basically, probably for years. And everyone, this is going to look really, really different because we all have different karma, and we all have different situations that we've born into, that we've been chosen to born into. So for all of this mountain of shit is going to look completely different. But we all have it. We all have our own mountain of shit. Quote me by that. It just starts with looking at it. And then once you start looking at it and coming to terms with it being there, you will know what to do next. And it just takes time. There's no easy way out. And this is another famous quote that I don't know who it's by, but the only way out is through. The only way out is through, ever. That has gotten me through a lot of hard times in life. It's just like, there's no way around this. The only way out is through. Might as well not make my pain painful, if that makes any sense. So let me know what you think in the comments. Please subscribe to my channel. Please check out the links in the description. There are many. I am a numerologist. I do numerology readings. I'm starting to give monthly readings on Patreon for just $5 a month. And what that looks like is we do kind of like a monthly forecast type thing. I look at your birthday. I talk about what's important for you for that month. And then I draw a card. And it's really cute. It's a cute community. So come join us. And thank you again so much for watching. And I hope to post another video next week. Let me know what you guys are working on right now within ego, if this resonated with you. And also, just a quick reminder, because I never mentioned this, I do take requested videos, as long as it is actually relevant to my channel and like what I'm doing here. So if you have a request that would be appropriate, I'm willing to consider it. So drop that in the comments as well, or message me on Facebook or whatever. But yeah, sorry for the long ending. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you all soon. Bye.